All right, happy Tuesday, January 23rd. Aaron Brightman, Scarlet Faithful, coming to you with a kind of a quick episode, rapid reaction to the news reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN this morning that Rutgers has formally hired Colin Ferrell, defensive line coach from Kent State, to replace Marquise Watson. Marquise Watson, we know, has had a big impact on the program, but unfortunately was on the sidelines during the 2023 season due to a health issue. The good news is he is being retained and transitioning into an off the field role, which is great news, both for A, that he is recovering in a way that he is able to continue to work with the program, and B, he's obviously valued by Rutgers and Greg Schiano, and he's able to stay on. His obviously can't be a active recruiter, not being a assistant coach anymore, but he will still have a big impact just in terms of his presence, his relationship with current players, and he's beloved by the team right now. And Aaron Lewis, key player coming back, has cited his relationship with him, as have others. So I think that's important too. Big takeaway. Obviously, it's unfortunate for him that he can't continue as an assistant coach due to his health, but it is a positive that he apparently is on his road to recovery and able to continue working with Rutgers. And it's great that Rutgers is accommodating that. So that's a positive. And then on the flip side, in terms of replacing him with Colin Ferrell, not the Irish actor, but longtime defensive line coach at Kent State. He's also their associate head coach. He's been there since 2012. He started there in the mid 2000s, but he's also a Jersey guy. He started at Steinert High School, Central Jersey guy like myself, in Hamilton, and is in their Hall of Fame, was an all-state defensive lineman there, and also has coached. He also played at Petty 1 year post-grad, and then was an assistant coach at Hun before he went to Kent State. Hun, obviously a prominent prep school in New Jersey, a school that Rutgers has recruited, started to tap into the pipeline recently. So that's a positive as well. And I also think, from a recruiting perspective, he was named one of the best MAC recruiters, previously by 24/7 Sports. So he not only has New Jersey ties, but he has that Midwestern footprint in terms of recruiting relationships. Obviously, recruiting at the MAC level is a little bit different than the Big Ten level, but relationships is everything in recruiting, and he obviously has those. He's an experienced on-the-field coach coming to a defensive line that needs to take another step forward this year. You have, like I mentioned, Aaron Lewis coming back, Wesley Bailey's coming back, Renee Conga's coming back, Keontae Hamilton's coming back. They've added Malcolm Ray from the transfer from Florida State. You have some younger guys you're hoping to develop as well. So you need an experienced coach. He is that. And I think he offers a lot to the program. I think just in terms of, we've seen Schiano make some really good hires with experienced coaches previously and recently, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, bringing back Dave Brock to coach receivers and Pat Flaherty to coach offensive line. I think both made a huge impact this past season, just in terms of those position groups, in terms of elevating their play, improving their execution, improving their fundamentals, reducing mental mistakes. They were much more professional in both of those sides. In terms of, obviously they need to continue to develop and improve depth and talent on those position groups. But I thought that their impact was definitely felt this past year on the field. And I think the hope now is that Farrell can do the same for the defensive line, a unit that, at times was good, but definitely needs to develop depth. At the Big Ten level, you want 8 to 10 guys you can rotate on a regular basis. And they got worn down a little bit as the season went on. You're bringing in some new blood. You're retaining some of your top players. Now you're bringing in a coach that, has that experience to hopefully get them to that next step, which will obviously elevate the defense as a whole as well, which is a big need for 2024 for Rutgers as a whole to take another step, in terms of a regular season winning campaign, all that. We touched on the schedule last week, but, Colin Ferrell being hired as a defensive line coach. Rutgers now still has the linebackers position to fill. Corey Heatherman was hired by Minnesota recently as their new defensive coordinator, which, he was a big impact for Rutgers the last couple of years, just in terms of how he developed that position group. And always great to see guys get, elevated within the profession, and to go be a Big Ten defensive coordinator was a great step for him. One name to keep in mind was a guy that filled in for Watson this past year, Jared Keat. He was a defensive coordinator at Maine previously, had coached with Harris-Semiak. He could be a guy that ultimately they replace Heatherman with at linebackers, but he coached the defensive line this past year in Watson's absence, and was praised universally by the players and Schiano as well. So perhaps he remains with the program and is elevated to the linebackers coach. Perhaps he goes with Heatherman to Minnesota. I really don't know, but that is a name to keep in mind. Jared Keat, a guy that did an admirable job in Watson's absence this past year. But I think as a whole, the continuity that Rutgers has had on the coaching staff, this is the first time Schiano's had to make some moves on the defensive side of the ball over the last, 2 years. 3 years. And, I think to bring in, this is, the days of taking flyers on guys and bringing in super young guys that don't have a background. This is certainly not the case. So Ferrell, he's almost 40 years old. He's been a coach for a decade, being an associate head coach. He even filled in Kent State. He was an interim head coach for a stint in 2017. And the MAC, listen, that's a good G5 conference. So this guy's got a lot of experience as a coach. Again, as I mentioned, his recruiting footprint, both his relationships in New Jersey and in the Midwest for the Big Ten, that's crucial. Rutgers, did not recruit heavy in 2024 in New Jersey. And, as a whole was considered kind of the state was a little bit of a down year in terms of the talent pool. But we know that Rutgers has to continue to recruit New Jersey, and to have a guy now bringing on staff that has that experience, has those relationships, has that background, in addition to what he can offer geographically in the Big Ten footprint, I think is a positive. So overall, I think this is a really good hire. And again, I think retaining Watson is key as well. Keeping him in the fold, keeping him in the mix, and, supporting him through this recovery of his health. We all wish him the best and hope that it's a speedy recovery. But it sounds like it's a process. And the fact that Rutgers is supporting him and keeping him and helping him through this time is also a huge positive, and just speaks really positively about the relationship that Schiano has with people. And, is great to see. So, overall, this is obviously a very important offseason for Rutgers. And I think adding a guy like Ferrell to the staff, I think that they did the best they could in this past year. Again, Keat filling the role for Watson when he was out. And now we'll see what his future lies within the program. But in addition to that, adding Ferrell to the mix under Harris-Semiak, a guy that has a lot of experience. I think just, in terms of Harris-Semiak losing Heatherman, a guy that he worked with, in step for years. Now you're bringing in a guy that can kind of make a seamless transition, both recruiting and on the field, with a position group that, is crucial for the next step for this defense next year. So overall, really good news in terms of how this program is moving forward, in terms of handling the defensive line, in terms of supporting Watson. I think it's all good stuff. So that's my rapid reaction. I'm sure I missed some stuff. Some stuff might come out. I'll cover it again when, again, this is a rapid reaction to the news. And there's plenty more to cover. I have a lot of episodes coming up this week, so stay tuned to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. And thanks as always for listening.